On the balcony there with maybe a gin and tonic in our hands, talking about how we're going to change the world.
I think that's all we need to know about this community. Hello and welcome to episode 315 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. It's Saturday, March the 28th. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am managing partner at Velocity B, a B2B sales and marketing firm. And I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. This week, our weekly dose of marketing street knowledge comes from two special guests, Catherine Nichols and Jeremy Late, two successful fractional CMOs who have founded The Slice, a community for fractional marketers who share what inspired them to start the community, their insights from that community, and what they would chuck into our Rockstar CMO swimming pool. Before I join Robert Rose in our virtual bar, the Rose Rockstar, for our regular blend of mixology and marketing. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word. We'll be right.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Heather Eck hosts an amazing show called Your Radiant Spirit. Heather, tell listeners about the show.
What if the colors you're drawn to, the creative urges you ignore, and the quiet intuitive hits you brush off are actually trying to tell you something? Your Radiant Spirit is the podcast that helps you listen and live with greater clarity and purpose.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find and subscribe at heathereck.com/yourradiantspirit, on marketingpodcast.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Welcome, Jeremy and Catherine, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you both?
Yeah,
Good,
really
thank
good.
you.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that when we were chatting beforehand, I was supposed to tell you who I was directing the question to. And the first question I ask, I get that wrong and don't direct it to either of you. Anyway, let's start with you, Jeremy. Where are you dialing in from, and how are you and what you're up to?
So I'm dialing in from sunny central London.
Nice.
I'm working as a fractional marketer, primarily with fintech and B2B SaaS businesses at the moment, and it's keeping me extremely busy.
Nice. And Catherine, where are you?
I'm in sunny Guildford, where it's currently 18 degrees.
I know.
And I'm also a fractional marketer, B2B. I have been doing that for the last 3 years approximately, and primarily work in SaaS and fintech.
Nice. Yeah. It's a beautiful day here in the UK. Normally, I'm talking to guests that are in the US where there's snowstorms or something going on, but we're just having a beautiful, mild spring day today. So it's fantastic.
It's
so you're
peak season for magnolia trees, isn't it? I don't know whether you've got any locally, but they're just looking amazing.
Jeremy, you have tuned into the editorial policy of this show. We talk about the weather, we talk about our gardens.
We have a microclimate in our garden because we're south facing. The back of our house is cream rendered. So when I step outside of that, I realise I have to put extra clothes on. So there you go.
Nice. It's like a little drop of the Mediterranean there. All right. So we've turned this into a gardening show, which I do with one of my other guests as well. So that's good. But what we're really here to talk about is The Slice, which is a community for fractional marketers that you both founded. When did you found it? It's very recent, isn't it? It's just last year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the end of summer 2025, August, I think. Yeah. Again, on another very sunny day, conversation in the South Bank Centre on the River Thames. Yeah. On the balcony there with maybe a gin and tonic in our hands, talking about how we're going to change the world.
I think that's all we need to know about this community. If I'd have known it was started over a gin and tonic, I'd have joined. Well, I joined fairly early anyway, but I'd have joined there and then. That sounds fantastic. So let's go to you, Catherine. Tell us about the Slice for the people that aren't familiar with it, and what is it?
Yeah. So we are a community for fractional marketers, which, as Jeremy said, we set up at the end of the summer, prompted by the fact that, I guess, twofold. It's isolating working fractionally, you're running your own business. We're learning all the time, and we've got no one to learn from, as well as running your own business. So we built it to a community to be able to connect, collaborate, and help individuals like us build successful portfolios. And we've gone from a very small group to a very blossoming, engaged, authentic audience. I think we're on our 7th event now, Jeremy. The appetite's been incredible.
Yeah, and it's and I know that the three of us are English. My audience is a lot in the US, and you have a lot of US folks in the group as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do, actually. Actually, we've got members from upwards of 15 different countries.
Wow.
And fractional is much more advanced in the US market. So we do definitely over-index there. But we're open to everybody. And we're starting to see, different countries starting to get their head around fractional. And when that happens, they start to come towards us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about what inspired us you to start the community. And again, I love the fact it was over a gin and tonic. And regular listeners of the show will know that I love a gin and tonic. But there is a bit. There is a lot of talk about the term fractional at the moment, both positive and negative. And I've seen a lot of people calling themselves fractional CMOs, and they've got a varying level of expertise. How do you guys define a fractional CMO? Maybe start with you, Jeremy, this time.
Yeah. So, I mean, in its most basic concept, it's someone who is sharing their time across a number of different endeavors. And that could be business, but it could also be charity or personal projects. That's where the term comes from. And essentially, what I see is it's people who are perhaps later stage in their career, who have, I suppose, a desire to work in a slightly different way, to unlock some more freedom, but also to work for lots of different companies, and they get rewardment and also enjoyment from that. That point about seniority is an interesting one, because technically anybody could call themselves a fractional, and that's something that we all just have to accept. But what I see is mature fractionals who've been doing it for a few years. You can tell in their profile and the companies that they're working for that they've got what it takes to win business through that model.
Do you agree with that, Catherine? You got anything to add to that in terms of the definition?
So I think it's a bit of a misnomer that fractional marketers are part-time marketers. That's not the case. To build on Jeremy's point about it being people more established in their career, who might want some different work-life balance, but it doesn't mean that they're a part-time marketer. So I guess they're think of us as part-time executives. We're about accountability rather than just execution. Typically, you own the pipeline, the revenue, you set the strategy. You're the budget holder, and you're not just running campaigns. You're deciding whether the campaigns are worth running. So I think it's good to challenge that.
Yeah, and that runs on to my next question. So we'll stick with you for a minute, Catherine. Why do you think organizations are choosing fractional talent rather than hiring FTEs?
Yeah, I guess 3 core reasons. There's, the market has changed in terms of the senior marketing roles that are out there. I mean, that's what prompted, my career change. I'd gone on maternity leave, took a couple of years to have 3 small humans. Jeremy loves that line. And then when I came back, to look for a new role, that the market, the landscape would change. Businesses are reluctant. So it's hiring a full-time CMO can take 6 to 9 months. If you hire a fractional CMO, they can be starting in weeks and delivering, more importantly. Cost efficiency. So you can get the senior level expertise without the full-time salary or the equity and other add-ons for permanent roles. And you also get flexibility. Most companies, or a lot of companies, maybe it's startup to scale up phase, they don't need a full-time CMO. They might need someone to come in and particularly address a point. So establish a strategy, and then later on they can recruit somebody for the business that is full-time and that may be more junior, for example. But typically they're brought in for a period of transformation.
Yeah, I love your little humans, and they're 7, 5, and 3, right, Catherine? You mentioned before.
What are they? They're I don't know how old they are. 8, 7, and 3. No, 8, 7, and 4.
And just to just to carry on with this, just to continue with this point, Jeremy, about the budget side of things, and bringing in a FT at that growth stage. I think Catherine made a really good point there about the fact that you need experience but don't necessarily have the budget. Is that your experience as well?
Oh, that's absolutely spot on. And certainly a lot of the gigs that I've been working on, I'm often the first CMO the business have ever had.
Yeah.
And obviously to appoint a full-time CMO is a big risk for certain businesses. So it de-risks the hiring process and it gives them access to that top-tier expertise. And typically, I'm coming into an environment where either there's a curious, generous founder who wants to do everything to do with marketing, has got their arms wrapped around the brand, or there's a team of junior marketers who really feel put upon, that they're trying to do the best that they can, but they don't have the support, the training, or often the tools. So bringing someone in to sometimes kind of connect the dots is really part of what they're looking for, but they just can't afford to do that full time.
I've seen that the same. And I also think the nice thing about fractional, to your point, Catherine, about the flexibility, is that you can come in, inject a bit of that experience, get that team up and running, and then you can roll off, right? Because you've now got an effective marketing team. They don't need a big, a full-time experienced CMO. You can just get them up and running, and I think that's good. I do like your description of the very kind description of the meddling founder. I don't think you didn't say meddling. You said something else. I know that a lot of marketers wouldn't have been so kind about the founder who's dabbling in marketing, but I like that. And I'll the next question, I'll stick with you again, Jeremy. But you're both experienced fractional marketers, and you've been doing this community thing, and I'm part of the discussions that are happening, and it's really interesting. What have you guys learned from the community and since you started this? So again, start with you, Jeremy.
I suppose 2 things for me. First would be that fractional has gone mainstream. It absolutely has. In the last 6 months, it's exploded, and that's evidenced by the growth in membership. When I started 3 years ago, I would say nearly every conversation I had, I was having to explain what fractional meant. How was I defining it? Because people had never heard of the term. So I think we're seeing it. People more willing to put it on their LinkedIn profile, and more companies seeing it as a potential gateway to expertise. The second thing for me would just be the quality of talent working fractionally. I think Catherine put it really well. She said, part-time resource. Sometimes people perceive fractionals as maybe using it as a stopgap in between roles. That is absolutely not the case. I mean, at our first event, the brands that these people had worked for were staggering. Every brand, every household brand that you can imagine,
I know,
were represented in that room. So this absolutely is a hotbed of talent. And we post quite a lot, and I actually do think a lot of the expert marketers are actually working fractionally now. They have to work faster. They're like the elite marketing teams faster, accelerated. Their onboarding is shorter. Their budgets are tighter. They have to do magic. They're not chief marketing officers. They're chief magician officers. They really do amazing things.
Jeremy, you can definitely come on the show again. Catherine, anything to add? What have you learned from this community?
I think to build on what Jeremy said in terms of, the market here has exploded. We alluded to it being about 18 months behind the US. But fractional as a model has existed for a long time in finance and in technology. It's just, it is just now coming to be mainstream. I guess the biggest thing that I've learned from the community is, just how similar everyone is in terms of their challenge, their challenges. It's remarkably, consistent regardless of industry. And no matter how experienced the people in the community are they're incredibly intelligent and got loads of experience, is that, we're all running businesses, and running your own business is very different to being a CMO, permanent CMO in-house. And just that how everyone is, it's quite a level, playing field in terms of that. And how everyone is learning to navigate it. And it's really great to, I've met a massive breadth of people that I wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think, we're all everyone is leaning in and really taking it as, as a community. And I think, for the best outcome. And it sounds cheesy, but like Jeremy says, we're chief magician officers. You said chief magician or chief magical?
Yeah, you could say either. I have heard CMO stand for chief most out as well. So choose your flavor.
Yeah.
I love that. And also, and it's nice because this actually leads on to my next question, which is, I see a broad range of conversations happening in the group. And like you were just talking about there, Catherine, was that, some of it is about the basics of operating your own business, because when you're moving from corporate to this, suddenly you're a limited company or you're a sole trader, and you've got to worry about getting an accountant and how do you structure things. And currently in the chat right now is, what are your minimum set of tools that you use? What's everybody using? There's some really good practical advice that's happening, as well as some of this high level stuff. But apart from those kinds of things, what when people are moving from corporate to fractional, what's your top advice? Maybe start with you again, Catherine.
I think it's probably remember to focus on selling outcomes rather than your skills. You've got to flip that. Whilst it's great to have come from a great pedigree and be considered a great marketer, ultimately your audience now, or your ICP now, is hiring you to drive pipeline growth and get clarity on their business going forwards. So it's a mind shift. You have to work out, I think, very early what it is that you stand for, what your ICP is, rather than catch-all. And I think in the early days, it can probably be quite daunting, not, thinking I'll just go for anything. But it's there's been this discussion on the group before, do I take this opportunity or do I not? And sometimes it's okay to say no to something, because if it's not right, if it's not they might be offering you equity rather than a retainer, and that's not what you want. So you have to be confident to say no. And I guess the one thing that the community has massively taught me is it's about getting in front of people, meeting people, because referrals are everything in this space. And that's how you learn of opportunities and build your portfolio.
Yeah, and I think that joining the community myself and like seeing 1,000 other people join the community, that focus on ICP seems really important, doesn't it? Because there is a lot of competition for the fractional CMO role. So, Jeremy, what's your top advice?
Very similar. Certainly get your story straight. So when I first started, I was positioning myself as this kind of hotshot corporate marketer. I've worked in big companies with big budgets and big teams. People who employ fractionals don't care about that. That's probably the biggest turnoff. So you need to very quickly work out, what is your story? What is your USP? What can you bring to that business? They're looking for solutions and they're looking for proven impact. And I think you don't need to tell the same story to everybody, but you've got to be clear about what it is that you stand for. And I meet a lot of people who are torn between whether they pursue fractional or whether they stay in the corporate world, full-time world. And my advice is you do have to choose, because it's a mindset thing. As soon as you position yourself as a fractional marketer, you're going to open up a world of opportunity, because people in your network will come to you for that reason. If you don't position yourself that way, they'll never be aware. And so you'll lose those opportunities. So, I'm not forcing anyone to go one way or the other, but making a choice is probably the biggest decision that people have to make.
It's like, I mean, what I've found is you're applying the rules of B2B marketing to yourself, right? What's your product? Who's your ICP? Who's your target audience? But also the constant battle you have with sales, which is, no, we're not going after every single opportunity. We need to focus and narrow down, right? So the temptation, I think, is always to offer a buffet of services rather than saying, no, this is the thing I do, because you worry that you're not going to capture those opportunities. And it's just like that, isn't it?
It's completely true. I mean, we're professional marketers and we should apply that theory to how we present ourselves. But, we're running a business, as Catherine said, but we actually are the business. So our brand, our profile, our visibility, our positioning, actually doing this is a really good exercise. If you're starting out, what is your proposition? What are you great at? Who's your ideal customer? All of those things, the sort of advice you'd give to a business, apply to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a mentor at the Institute of Directors, so it's an unpaid mentor thing. So I'm coaching somebody who's going through this transition, and all I'm going through is my B2B playbook with a person. Exactly what you're saying, and it's revelationary for them, because they're not thinking about themselves as the product, right? Because they're fresh out of corporate. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, we all know that if you're trying to appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. That's so true.
Exactly. So the next question, and Catherine, you were talking about how, I'm going to ask Jeremy first, but so prepare yourself. But Catherine, you were just saying about turning down opportunities. So here on Rockstar CMO, I always ask my guests about their rider. So I'm inspired by the Van Halen Brown M&M story that you have to be a certain age to know. But anyway, I try and lean into the Rockstar CMO brand. What is your must-have for a new marketing gig for both of you guys? And start with you, Jeremy.
So I must have no micromanagement.
No meddling founders.
No meddling founders, absolutely not. And, obviously when you are brought in, and sometimes in smaller businesses, this is you're treading new ground. There's a bit of protectionism that goes on, but also maybe a little bit of, I suppose, questioning whether you're going to do the right thing for the business. That trust is really important. And I want space to be able to do what I need to do. And space is not just kind of physical sense, but it's also in a kind of, I suppose, a metaphorical sense. Space to really critically analyze the business and then come back to the founder with, this is what I think, rather than almost like caught in this world of assumption where I'm trying to think, what do they really want me to do? We all want to do the best work of our lives, and I think we can only do that as marketers if we're given the space to analyze the problem that we've been asked to solve and to come up with the right solution for it.
Yeah, a lot of trust in that. Catherine, what's yours?
I guess, the no micromanagers, but executive alignment. So, the CEO and the leadership team, the CEO could be the founder, as long as they're on the same page and they've brought me in for a particular reason, and that that is for growth. It's not, they have the same perception of marketing, which helps drive and make my role easier. I guess the other one is data. And I'm not saying, it's all pretty and perfect, because, when you go into most startups, that's not the case. But just that there's data, I can put it in whatever, I can mine it in whatever way I want, but it's useful if already the business has something to work with, because then that helps me make decisions.
Yeah. I mean, we're always walking into organizations that are run by gut feel, right? And you're like, no, let's drill into this, otherwise you're not going to be successful.
That's so
and actually,
true.
to your executive alignment point, you just reminded me that I was hired as a CMO by the CEO, and I arrived at a meeting and nobody knew I was coming. Other executives didn't know I was coming.
Surprise!
Hello, you got a new CMO. And this, and I should have tried. This is going to be my final question, and I should have finished on a positive rather than maybe it's going to come over a little bit negative. But again, inspired by the rock stars of the past who used to throw things into swim pools, we have a regular feature on the Rockstar CMOs called the Swim Pool, our portal to health, all the crap bullshit acronyms, empty fads, and snake oil of marketing. What would you chuck in? Catherine, you go first.
Those micromanagers? No. I would say vanity metrics. Things like traffic without conversion, MQLs without pipeline, high intent MQLs that mean nothing, impressions without intent. They need, for me, they belong in that pool.
Yeah, I had somebody chuck in MQLs in their entirety. I was so tired of them. What about you, Jeremy?
I'm going to throw in the phrase, do more with less.
I love it.
It drives me absolutely mad because it just makes no sense. I think marketing is already guilty of doing far too much, and to do more, even more, just doesn't make sense. That phrase has been around a long time. Probably COVID is when I first heard it, which is, look, things are really tough. You've got to try and do more, with less resource, with less budget.
Yeah.
In reality, we should always be fighting for efficiency, absolutely. But it's the outcome. So it's not do more, it's achieve more. That's where I think we should be focusing. So let's definitely throw that in the pool.
I love it. That is definitely going in. And I'm always upfront with those kind of conversations. So it's an investment. If you're going to put less in, you're going to get less out. You can't. There's no magic, is there? We are not chief magic officers, are we? So
no, but we know Pareto applies, right? Typically 80% of the value is coming from 20% of the activity. Yeah. But rather than focus on the 20%, we want to just do more. And
absolutely.
Companies tend not to like stuff stopping. They get worried by that. They see it as a bad thing. But I've worked for a lot of companies where actually I've made a decision to stop something, and I've kind of seen the blood rush from the face. And then 2 weeks later, they've seen that it's had no impact, and they've just saved a lot of money.
That is I think I could probably do a whole show on that particular topic, because we're always being asked to do new projects or be on a new channel. So what are we going to cut? What are we not going to do?
What are we going to cut?
Yeah. There's no, and I don't mean cut the budget. I mean, we have a certain level of resource budget and stuff, and you want me to do a new thing. So what are we going to stop? What are we going to stop?
And where are we going to reinvest? Yeah. So for me, it's an investment decision. So this isn't about reducing the size of the pie. It's a reallocation of assets to where they're going to deliver most value.
Yeah. Well, I better wind this up. Very enjoyable chatting to you both. I could have continued on, but I know you've got places to be, and the Slice network does not manage itself, does it? So when people spin the dial on the interwebs and they want to have a chat with you both, maybe join the community, where they're going to find you. Start with you, Catherine.
In terms of me personally, on LinkedIn, so my surname's Nichols, so Catherine Nichols. But the Slice network, you can find us on LinkedIn or online at theslicenetwork.com.
Yeah, I was going to congratulate. Cool. Just for the listeners' benefit, the shiny new Slice website has only just gone live. Was it yesterday, the day before? Something like that. It was very recently, wasn't it? Yeah, so well done. Jeremy, where are people going to find you?
Yeah, in the usual places, very similar to Catherine. So I do have a very bad LinkedIn habit. So I am posting kind of weekdays, kind of pretty relentlessly at the moment. So you can find me there for sure. But yeah, please, if someone's thinking about working fractionally, we're the sort of community where the barriers to entry are really low. We want to support people, make what is a really important decision for their career. And once they've made that decision, do all we can to support them. So our purpose, just to put it out there, is we help fractional marketers connect, collaborate, and build stronger, more sustainable careers. So that's what we're all about.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much. And thanks for being on the show. And I look forward to seeing you next time at one of your Slice events. So thank you very much.
Likewise.
And
thanks
I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having us, Neil.
Thank you, Jeremy and Catherine. I can personally attest that they have done a fabulous job with the Slice. It's a very active community across in-person, virtual events, WhatsApp and LinkedIn. It's free to join, and of course, I'll include all the links in the show notes. Right, time to wind down into the weekend and join Robert Rose, Chief Troublemaker at Seventh Bear, in our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar, as I pick his brains over one of his classic cocktails.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's the end of the week. I feel good. Temperature's somewhat back to normal here in Los Angeles, which is meaning it feels like spring, not the middle of hell.
Crazy.
So life is pretty good. Other than, as I always say, other than the disaster dumpster fire that is my country right now, it's pretty good. I don't have to go through the Strait of Hormuz, so I'm feeling pretty good about life.
I'm gonna skip right. But yes, if we go back to the other story, which is how fucking hot it's been in California for you guys the last couple of weeks. We've seen
it's been very hot. It's been weirdly hot. So, something climate change is
I heard of it. Well, it sounds like we need to chill out over a drink.
We do, and we have a fun drink for us. I was inspired by us, having a bit of a Sex in the City moment. You and me sitting in some glamorous bar somewhere, and drinking Cosmos.
Nice.
So I got inspired for Cosmos, it's very fancy, and we would. It's probably need to check in our man cards here, but in so many ways, I love a good Cosmo. And so for those, it's a pretty popular and well understood drink, but it's ostensibly just, I use 2 parts vodka, good vodka, if there is such a thing. Yeah. And then 1 part Cointreau, of course. And then the classic that makes a Cosmo, the cranberry juice. And a little bit of lime juice. And, you shake all of that up, pour it into a martini glass. You get yourself an orange peel as an optional garnish there. And away we go with our fancy Cosmos.
Nice. And, we get into all sorts of trouble if we say things like checking in our man card and stuff like that. But I'm sure that we can embrace our inner Cosmo drinker.
Oh, I'm embracing my inner everything. Yeah, with that, I am adjacent to a number of things, So and have no worries about being adjacent to all of them, right? Adjacent to all the various things that I'm proud. I'm too old to worry about such things, But in all, as far as sort of cliches go, as part of the patriarchy, let's put it that way. Cosmo's not the most manliest of drinks, right? Not considered, and it's a cliche. I get it. It's a cliche, but cliches are a cliche for a reason. So I'm happy to embrace whatever it is that identity that gets thrust upon me with a good Cosmo, because I appreciate a good Cosmo, as I also appreciate a good drink with an umbrella in it as well.
And a show tune. Right, anyway.
Yeah, and a good show. I mean, a great show tune. Oh, I love good show tunes, yeah. Of course.
All right, mate. Well, this week, the question I have for you is very on brand with Rockstar CMO because I want to chat about Rick Rubin.
Yes, of course.
I also want to pull on, it's a bit of a thread with you as well. You mentioned it today on the This Old Marketing podcast. You referred to an article in the publication called White Noise, where they talked about the future of work. And you've also referred to his quotes in your book, Valuable Friction. So we've mentioned your podcast and your book
he's got
in one
multiple
episode.
There,
Yeah. So I'm ticking all the bingo boxes here. Excuse me. And the quote I liked out of the article, and this is something you guys talked about as well, is what he's referring to is that like the future of work for us humans in the world of AI. And he says, taste and touch, knowing what's good, knowing what's right, knowing what you want, evolve into essential tactical skills that remain solely the privilege of us, right? As AI abstracts away everything else. What say you, Robert? I know you've got quite a lot on this particular chat. So what do you think of this?
I mean, we've talked about it before, as I've ranted on and raved about various aspects of AI and how it's moving not just into our marketing strategies, but into our culture and the way that we operate and create and do all of those things. And, without belaboring all of the things that I've said before, ostensibly, what I've said is that, you have to understand and recognize what good looks like in order to make AI really work for you. And, I was doing a lot of thinking about that over the last couple of weeks. And you're seeing a lot of it start to emerge now on not suggesting that I'm necessarily forward thinking or anything, but it's starting to really emerge now. Like this article, you're starting to see more and more people on LinkedIn and on social media go, hey, yeah, it really does. The human taste, knowing when to stop, all the things that you would associate with basically artistry or taste or discernment and judgment that are wisdom, things that are human only traits have to be applied in order to, really make interesting things with AI, because that's really at the end of it is making interesting things. And it's an interesting side conclusion, I guess, and it's directly adjacent to this article, which is there's a fascinating, because more and more I'm getting asked, and I was literally just on a podcast that's directed toward young students just coming out of college, and they were asking me this very question. They were saying, what would you tell young people today about AI when they're being, basically people are telling them, go get good at AI. And of course, the debate that I often have with people is I say, don't go get good at AI as your first thing. Go get good at the thing you want to get good at, right? Whether that's strategy or music or, business or marketing or whatever it is you want to be good at, learn it so that you know what good looks like, so that when you use AI, and you can ultimately, get very easily trained on how to use AI to do that, you know what good looks like on the other side of it. And that's really at the heart of what the Rick Rubin quote and that article is really saying. The interesting thing is that I hadn't considered, and my aha moment was sort of the other day, is it actually right now, at this very moment, where AI sits today, it benefits, I'm going to say this carefully because it's like I don't want to run afoul of anything, but it actually benefits us, those of us who are older and more experienced, more than it does a younger generation. And what I mean by that is that those of us who are older and more experienced are beyond the fact, in many ways, are at the point now where we are at least masterful craft practitioners of whatever craft it is, whether it's, again, music or strategy or marketing, et cetera. So we've had the miles on our wheels to know what good looks like and create good. And so nowadays, as we start to use AI, it's not only that we can use AI to, create good things or better things using the tool and recognize it, but it's also, we don't have as much to discover. You know what I mean? In terms of the craft itself. So we're allowed, or we are empowered, to be slightly lazier with the tool than someone who is young is. And what I mean by that is that if I use AI and, what made me think of this was thinking about creation of songs, right?
Yeah.
In other words, my experience with songwriting, my experience with creating music manually for the last literally 30 years of my life and all of that. And somebody like Rick Beato, who has the YouTube channel, and other musicians who are using AI, et cetera, and who've got 40 years and 50 years of experience, the tools that they would use, whether it's Suno or some other AI tool to create a piece of music, they will not only, I think, be able to create a better piece of music using those tools, but they'll be able to do so more quickly because they can actually rely on the tool to create something of interest earlier. In other words, they'll recognize good faster than someone else that's young or doesn't have the experience might. And if you apply that to just about everything, there is an advantage there to having that experience and taste and discernment. And it's unfortunately, that means that there is no shortcut for young people. They need to actually go learn and get experienced in the thing. But the pressure, of course, is that they have to do so much faster than we had to.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder, actually, you talking about age and stuff, is whether we should actually say who Rick Rubin is, right? So he's a legendary music producer who famously has an ear for a good tune, but actually can't play any instruments, right? Which is why he's such a great analogy for this thing that we're talking about, right? He's incredibly good at, he's a taste guy, right? He's very good at picking out what the cultural zeitgeist and taste is, and then he doesn't make the music, somebody else makes the music, but he's able to, identify what's good. Right? Am I explaining this properly? Who the great Rick Rubin is?
Right. The way to frame it is that he's forgotten more about music than we'll ever know. Right.
Yeah.
And he has studied it. He has looked at it. He's listened to it. He's lived it. He's made it with other artists. So he understands at a deep level. I think we even talked about this on this show. It's like we talked about the philosophy of creation. And in that, it's like we have to understand that value of creation or value of communication is all in the consumer of it, not the creator of it. You might be enriched by the creation of something. You might be you might do something that totally enriches you, and a piece of art that you create that never sees the light of day, and all it does is enrich you because it's something that you created and then you put in a closet and nobody ever sees it, and that's fine. But if the creation is going to have any public value, that value is determined not by you, but by the consumer of it. And so in so many ways, what Rick is able to do with his quote unquote taste and discernment is understand that which will be considered value at the consumption. So that's his wisdom. That's his experience. He knows what will resonate with more people. So when he applies that wisdom and that taste and discernment to other people's music, what he's really doing is applying a layer of saying, I know when to stop. I know when it's good enough. I know when it's going to be good enough to be a hit song or to be something that is going to resonate with the consumers of that content.
Yeah, and that's the role we'll play increasingly. We'll do less execution and more of knowing what the right thing to do and when to stop and all that stuff. And actually, a more kind of practical example of this, I know that the other day, one of your chums posted on LinkedIn that they'd created this sort of, they had this need for to replace in a workshop sticky notes and process, and they created this thing over the weekend, vibe coding away, because they were at a crossroads. Should they use, it sounded like anyway, that should they use the old school sticky notes and stuff like that, or they should be using something more modern? He didn't really have a solution for that, and he created something. Now, in the example, I think along this thread about us vibe coding thing, the way that that's being portrayed is anybody can do that. But of course they can't. You need to know the mechanics of the workshop, what you're trying to achieve, what needs to be on those sticky notes, what this thing is, right? And then you create it. You couldn't create that not knowing how a workshop works, for example. I know it's a simple example, but I was just trying to bring it into the practical of this stuff.
Well, that's exactly right, because and again, it comes back to the simple fact that you need to know when it's done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in order to know when it's done, you have to have a sense of what all the ingredients are, right? It's like anybody, theoretically, you can say anybody can make a souffle, right? It's the equipment needed to make a souffle is not very extensive and it's not hard, but the knowing what ingredients are going to need to go in there, knowing what a good souffle looks like when it comes out the other side, and knowing how to and when to put in the ingredients and how to put the ingredients in there is takes a lot of time. You have to understand how to do that in order to produce something of high quality. And so in order to know that, you have to know it. You know what I mean? And you can't know it, so you can't have someone create it for, like, literally, if I walked into a kitchen and there was somebody who had never, made anything before, and I was giving them the instructions and I was going to quote unquote vibe code my way to creating a souffle, I would have to know how to tell them that. And that's the difference, right? So it's like all this vibe coding stuff is like, it's great, but you're either going to create something that you've forgotten about, or you're going to create, let's assume you do know, the ultimate test of that, that sticky note example is how did it work? Right. And if it worked, great, good for them. Did they get the same level of quality out of that they would have gotten elsewhere, or better? And then the question is, you get into, there's a wonderful Reddit subreddit called DIY. Yeah. And it's basically people who are putting together these DIY solutions, do-it-yourself solutions. But then you go, did you spend more on doing it yourself than you would just like buying a jar? You know what I mean? It's like, is it really worth, when there's so many just like off-the-shelf solutions that you could just go do, like a sticky note and a whiteboard? What was the benefit of actually vibe coding the thing, right? What is it? You know what I mean? Is it just because you could, or is it because there is actually an efficiency that was created there, or what? What's the benefit?
Well, this is exactly. This is a rabbit hole. I've written about this as well, and this is a rabbit hole you could go down. Right? Is it starts off as a weekend project, then you need to add another user on it, or you need to do something, and then suddenly it becomes you're a fucking software developer, and this is going to be hard, right? And then
exactly, which is the same argument we used to have, by the way, back in the day. You and I have talked about this. It's the same argument we used to have about installed software versus cloud software, right?
Yeah. And it's whether the juice is worth the squeeze in this point, isn't it? The first couple of days of running this thing is probably lots of upside, and then as soon as anything starts to change in terms of requirements, then it gets really hard. So I think, yes. But anyway, we've wandered off Rick Rubin. But that is the taste and discernment we need to apply, isn't it, to these things, to vibe coding or to any creativity.
We're starting to already start to see it, in this sense of the quote unquote rise of storytelling, which we've talked about on this show before. The rise of people who can actually write, and we're actually seeing a more demand for that rather than less demand for that. We're starting to see influencer marketing move more to those who have sort of taste and discernment rather than big social media followings. The influencers of the future are those who are sort of have the experience, the bona fides, the title, rather than sort of just a big, like 100,000 followers and sort of came up overnight, right? So we're starting to see that the some people are calling it the taste economy, I guess, and so that will certainly start to become more and more important as we move forward. As it becomes easier and easier to create things, it becomes more and more important to create good things.
Exactly. It's that very question, isn't it? Just because you can, should you?
Right?
Is it? Yeah. So, if we're looking for some tasteful advice on all things marketing, where might we find that, Robert?
Well, come check us out at our website at seventhbear.com. It's we're doing a pretty decent job of updating that, although I need to go in and spend a little attention on it.
Yeah, but you don't call it a hovel anymore, so that's a good start.
No, it's got the right structure. It's a cobbler's kids thing of the content, getting the content up there and getting the copyright and paying attention to it. So it's a nice shiny new car that I'm not driving.
Splendid. And then when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, mate?
LinkedIn will be where I'm mostly on the socials these days. Although because of the current situation, I'm spending a lot of time on Threads as well.
I saw that. All right, mate. And most importantly for me, will you be in the bar next week?
Of course.
I look forward to it, my friend. See you then. Thank you, Robert. I couldn't resist talking about Rick Rubin. It's so appropriate for the podcast. And the article I was referring to there was what in the White Noise newsletter and called Rick Rubin is the Future of Work. So that's a wrap on episode 315, the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and thank you for putting a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. You can find links to me, Jeremy, Catherine, The Slice, and Robert in the show notes, and the article we discussed, along with links to our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes at rockstarcmo.com. Next week, Kathy is back to discuss her latest research from her Bare Essential series, and Robert is back in the bar. And in the meantime, I'll leave you with this quote from Rick Rubin that seems pertinent for us marketers. Zoom in and obsess, zoom out and observe. We get to choose.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.